Our environment is full of wonderful plants growing in different places. Mountains and hills, grasslands and plains, even deserts. Did you know that there are some plants that grow on the surface of lakes while some others grow on the seabed deep in the sea? In other words, plants can be found anywhere on the earth. The natural surroundings in which a living thing, that is animal or plant, lives, feeds and reproduces is called its habitat. The survival and growth of plants depend upon the climate, weather conditions and soil of the place. Plants of a particular region have special features that help them survive in their natural habitat. The process of developing certain features to suit one's environment is called adaptation. That is why we find certain plants in a particular area but not in another. Let us learn how plants adapt to the climatic conditions in their habitat in order to survive. Terrestrial plants. Plants that grow on land are called terrestrial plants. They get their name from the Latin word terra, meaning land. Terrestrial plants grow on different landforms such as mountains and hills, deserts and plains, grasslands and wet, marshy places. Plants in deserts. Deserts are barren, that is dry, regions with very little rainfall. As such, they experience a very extreme climate, very hot during the day and very cool at night. Because of the extreme weather and poor rainfall, there is not much vegetation. Very few plants grow in deserts. These plants adapt themselves to the desert climate. Cacti are an excellent example of plants that adapt to desert climate. Some features of desert plants are: the leaves are modified into spines to prevent loss of water by evaporation. These also help the plants to protect themselves from animals. Some desert plants have thick and fleshy leaves and stems which help them in storing water as well as in photosynthesis. Some desert plants have roots spreading wide near the surface, while others have those that go deep into the ground in search of water. Plants growing in plains. Plains are wide and fairly warm regions. Some areas in the plains experience a hot and wet climate, while in some others it rains all through the year. Naturally, plants growing in different areas of the plains adapt themselves to their immediate environment. Useful plants growing in the plains include cereals, fruits, vegetables, and other crops. Winters are suitable for growing food crops like wheat and vegetable crops like carrot, radish, turnip, cabbage, and cauliflower. Ladyfinger, gourd, and cucumber are grown in plains during summers. Terrestrial plants growing in plains have well-arranged leaves to take in necessary sunlight. Also, a thin waxy layer on these leaves prevents them from drying out, especially during summers. The roots of these plants are also well developed so as to obtain essential nutrients and water from the soil. Some trees growing in plains lose all their leaves in winter and begin to grow new leaves in summer. Such trees are called deciduous trees. Peepal, gulmohar, mulberry, poplar, and shisham are some deciduous trees. Teak and coconut trees grow in the hot and wet areas of the plains and are evergreen. They do not shed all their leaves at a particular time. Plants in grasslands. Grasslands are vast areas largely covered with grasses with few or no trees. About 1/4 of the Earth's land area is covered with grasslands. These areas do not receive much rainfall and the climate is hot and humid. The lower part of the grass remains rooted in the ground and germinates in the rainy season when it receives rain. Plants in marshy areas. A marsh is a type of wetland that is mostly submerged in water. Such an area is usually found near the meeting point of rivers and oceans. The soil is sticky but not always clayey. It also has high salinity, that is high salt content, and therefore holds water for a long time. The plants that grow in marshy areas are called mangroves. The soil, being covered with water, does not allow air to reach the roots of the plant. Therefore, these roots adapt to this condition by growing upward and taking in the air from the atmosphere instead of taking from the soil. Such roots are thus called breathing roots. Insectivores or carnivorous plants. Plants that eat insects like spiders, mites, and small rodents are insectivorous or carnivorous. They have certain special features that help them trap the prey. The Venus flytrap and the pitcher plant are insectivorous plants. Both attract their prey with their sweet fragrance. As soon as the insect lands on its leaves, the Venus flytrap simply shuts its leaves. The pitcher plant is shaped like a pitcher with its leaf acting as a lid to trap the prey.
Good morning class. Today we'll start adaptation in aquatic plants. Children, you must have visited some pond or some river. You must have seen some plants are growing inside or some plants are growing on the top of the water. Those plants are nothing but aquatic plants. Aquatic plants are those plants that grow in the water. Basically, these are of three types. The first one is the floating plants. These plants float on the water. Second one is the fixed plants. Now, the fixed plants have their root fixed to the muddy soil of the pond. The last one is the submerged or the underwater plants. These plants are completely inside the water. Now let's move on to the floating plants. The examples are duckweed, water lettuce, and water hyacinth. By the name itself, you can know that these plants float on the water. Now let's take the example of duckweed. Because of its small size and its light weight, it can easily float on the water. Now these plants are not fixed to the soil. In the picture of water lettuce, you can see the roots very clearly. The roots are floating inside the water, but they are not fixed to the soil. Now these floating plants have spongy bodies which have empty spaces filled with air. This adaptation helps them to float on the water because it makes them slide. In the water hyacinth, you can easily see the spongy bodies. Now let's move on to the fixed plants. Examples are water lily and lotus. These plants are rooted to the waterbed of the pond. As you can see in this picture, they have their roots in the muddy soil of the pond. When you observe the leaves, they are broad and plate-like, which helps them to float on the water. And since they are continuously inside the water or they are continuously floating on the water, so there is a possibility of decay and rotting. Now to prevent that, leaves have waxy coating. Now these waxy coating form a thin layer or a thin sheet between the leaves and the water. It prevents the water to accumulate on the leaves. Hence, these waxy coating are preventing rotting. Now this stomata is present on the upper surface of the leaves. Now these stomata has in the exchange of gases. When you see the stems, they are hollow and light. These hollow and light stems helps them to float on the water. Now the leaves are broad, which provide a large space. Hence it becomes a nesting place for the tiny birds. Now let's see the underwater or submerged plants. The example are tape grass and hydrilla. Now these plants remain completely inside the water. They remain underwater. Their roots are fixed in the muddy soil. As you can see in the case of tape grass, the roots are fixed in the muddy soil. When you see the picture of hydrilla, you can easily see that the leaves are narrow and thin. There is no stomata. Hence, the exchange of gases takes place to the body surface. Now, when you observe the stems, they are flexible. They can bend with the flowing water. Now let's see over here. The aquatic animals such as fish breathe out carbon dioxide gas, which is used by the plants in the process of photosynthesis, and with the help of photosynthesis the aquatic plants produces oxygen. This oxygen is later taken in by the aquatic animals. Now this cycle continuously goes on and on. Hence, in this way, the aquatic plants clean the water by taking in the carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen with the help of the process called photosynthesis. This oxygen is later utilized by the aquatic animals. That's all for today. Thank you. Learn and revise.
Plants adapted to hills. In this module, you will learn how plants are adapted to hilly regions. Sid and Neil have come to a hilly region to be a part of their school camp. Look, they are walking on a road and enjoying the beauty of nature.
It is so beautiful here. Look at these pine trees Aren't they beautiful? Yes, they are. But, Sid, it is so cold here. The wind is chilling. I'm sure these trees must also find it difficult to cope with this extremely cold climate.
Well, kids, there is no doubt that hilly regions have extremely cold climate. However, these hilly areas are the natural habitat of pine trees. Pine trees have some special adaptations that help them to survive in hilly regions. Let's discuss about these adaptations. The first adaptation is the shape of these trees. They have a conical shape. During snowfall, the conical shape allows the snow to slip off easily from the branches of a pine tree. The next adaptation is in the leaves of pine trees. Pine trees have needle-like leaves, which are very tough. This helps the leaves to survive in the cold and snow. Look at the leaves. They are so fresh and green even in this extremely cold climate. More interestingly, these trees do not shed leaves throughout the year. Another adaptation of pine trees is that they have cones in place of flowers. These cones protect their seeds in harsh winters. Such cone-bearing trees like pine are also called coniferous trees or simply conifers. So these are the adaptations that make it easy for pine trees to survive in hilly regions. Not only the pine trees, there are many other coniferous trees like cedar, fir, and spruce that have similar adaptations to survive in winter. Like pine trees, all coniferous trees do not shed their leaves and remain green throughout the year. So, they are all called evergreen trees. Let's recap. Pine trees are adapted to hilly regions by having a conical shape, tough needle-like leaves, cones to protect their seeds. Cone-bearing trees like pine, cedar, fir and spruce are called coniferous trees.
Okay children, that is it for today. I hope you have followed it. If you have any doubts, you can contact me through my number, message me through WhatsApp number. Keep yourself safe, healthy and also study well children. Bye.